A lot of guys who watch my channel and so on will tell me that addiction doesn't exist, especially stuff like sex addiction, mainly because they say it's there to shame people. Mm-hmm. So let's start here. Like, what is addiction to you?
Addiction is deception. It is when the mind tries to deceive the heart. It's that simple.
Right.
The heart experiences life through emotions. And we're powerless over the thought that comes in to change that emotion.
Right.
What we do with that thought, we're not powerless over, right? But it's about us trying to change or negate our emotional experience. It has nothing to do with the substance or the action, right? It has to do with our emotions and whether we're going to feel them or not feel them.
And so this even comes to another thing where when we talk about addiction, I feel there's characteristics that happen.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what would that be? Like, how would you describe that?
I mean, well, the characteristics that develop kind of are a little environmentally based, and they're kind of, you see them in most addicts, some more than others, right? But it's basically, you know, an inability to sit with our negative emotional experience.
And so when that happens to somebody, what do they do?
Impulsive. People are more impulsive, right? Not wanting to be in their body. And so that's why we self-medicate, right? Or get high or try to leave the body or cloud our consciousness in a way where we're not aware of the things around us that are painful.
So to me, that makes sense. But let me hammer on a few things. Like, so drug addiction, that's obvious, right? Or it may not be so obvious to some people, but it's obvious. Like, all right, people are stealing stuff. They're robbing things. They're killing people. They're killing themselves. They become like these powerless, wasteoid human beings. This is easy to see. But then when we get into something like food addiction or sex addiction or relationship addiction, this is a little bit different, where I feel we see the same obsessiveness, but not directly affecting society. Always having to check online, always having to check up on somebody in order to use somebody's actions to complete themselves. And this is also why I think like the 12-step stuff is good, because there's so many different subsidiary groups. Like, I have the same addictive phenomenon as a gambler, but totally different broadcast. Whereas with a drug addict, very similar stories. What would be some of those traits of addiction that you see? Like the patterns that people have?
You know, to me, the traits aren't that important. What I look at is for the roots of where these traits are coming from, right? And a lot of it is rooted in, you know, childhood experience, and a lot of it is rooted in the family history, the childhood experience of our parents, our grandparents, great-grandparents. You know, epigenetic research is now confirming what indigenous people talk about, and that's that everything we do affects 7 generations at least. I just read a study that said 14 generations. So 7 to 14 generations of human experience is informing our cells, right? Informing our epigenetics, which triggers certain genes to trigger on or off, right? Or you could talk about it psychologically and say certain archetypes, right? There's the archetypes that used to get turned off when we would do a rite of passage around the age of 13 and 15, and the archetypes that get turned on are maturing, right? And so right now, without those rituals to activate these maturing archetypes, we have a culture of people that aren't really experiencing a lot of maturation. We're kind of stunted in our growth. And this is something you see in all addicts, is they do get stunted in their emotional development. And that sometimes when people get clean, they're kind of emotionally at the age that they were when they started, which sounded ridiculous to me until I started, you know, working with people in recovery as a therapist and seeing that. And that you can mature pretty quick throughout your adolescence, right? But you have to be doing things. Yeah, you have to be doing things, taking action, right? This is about living in the answer, living in the solution, and not just harboring the resentment for the problems.